Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through the industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Jessie Dasilva. She is a speaker, author, consultant, and a leading expert at helping people create the richest and most fulfilling lives. Welcome to the show, Jessie.
Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about creating your richest and most fulfilling life. And you will be able to tell how and more about it. So first, to understand itself, before one gets rich, what is this richest and most fulfilling life? Richest only in terms of money, or you mean something else also?
I think it can be either. It's all about how you look at it, right? Like a lot of people want a lot of money, but a lot of studies show that most people, and I'm going to use US dollars because that's what I'm familiar with, that most people don't feel much of a difference past around like $70,000. That data is a little outdated, so I'm sure it's a little higher now. But for me, what that means is not having to compromise or sacrifice on the things that are really important to you. And that's what allows your life to feel more fulfilling. However, money alone cannot do that. So if you're in the wrong job or a job that you can't stand, if you're not enjoying the kind of business you have, if you're not spending your day to day life in a way that's fulfilling, no amount of money is going to solve that. I mean, there's a saying, there's plenty of celebrities who go through divorces and addiction and plenty of negative things. So clearly, money doesn't solve all of our problems. It does solve a lot of them. I will say that it does solve a lot, but it needs to be riches as far as financial and as far as metaphorical, like the things that you want in your life that make you feel like life is worth living.
Right, right. And the next question then comes is how? How is the big question? People keep on people who are experts in what they do, either in terms of their career, either in terms of businesses, entrepreneurship, whatever they do, they are good at what they have been thinking, and still they are not able to succeed. What is it that they don't know? And then you come into the picture and you are able to tell them, you bring that all fulfillment as well as richness to their lives. How do you do so? What do you tell them? Is it a magic wand? Is it some magic words? Tell us about that so that millions of people across the world, not only on my show, but obviously through this, maybe in the times to come, will be able to get some more understanding of this whole mystery of making money and making a good life for themselves.
Well, I wish it were as easy as a magic wand or some magic words. It would make my job a lot easier. But I tell people that it's about finding what it is that's like lighting you up. And the problem is that a lot of people, like you said, they do work that they're good at. And they're good at it and they're successful. But for some reason, it feels like it's not fully there. And so, what I tell people with that is that it's often because they're in a zone of excellence, but not a zone of genius, to borrow the terms from Gay Hendricks, who's wrote a book called, I think it's called the Genius Zone or something like that. He also wrote The Biggest Leap. And so he talks about how there's a difference between doing work that you are that you're really good at and that that can distinguish you from other people versus doing work that you're both good at and you love. Like it is a natural innate ability that you don't get sick of it. And a lot of people have trouble figuring that out, especially the longer they spend in a career or business. They're like, I don't understand. Of course, I love it. I wouldn't be doing it otherwise, but it's not the same. And so I will tell people to start with smaller things. So if you start looking around at the little things that annoy you and fixing those, you'll eventually build up to this point where you're able to pinpoint what it is about your money, about your career, about your business that doesn't fit you anymore. So an example I like to use of this is I got to a breaking point years ago where I realized that all the pens I had in my house to write with were so annoying. Like they were these pens from like free hotel stays or swag from conferences, things like that. And I realized that they were driving me nuts. Every time I went to write a grocery list, I couldn't stand it. So that was one of the things I did. I gathered up all my pens, I chucked them, I put them in the recycling, and I bought nice pens for myself. And now I didn't have that small annoyance. And the more I started to do this with all these different things in my life, that's when I started realizing, oh, my career is one of these things as well. So sometimes you have to build up to it.
Absolutely, you are so right about this pen thing, Jesse. I can tell you, this was the case just some time back. All these pens, and I threw so many of them. Now I have got many of these, most of these working, except that some of this I need to refill them. But you're right. One needs to remove the annoyance, small annoyance out of their lives, and then every time they get into doing whatever they do, it's much more peaceful. Let's look at this getting rich part in a different way. For those people who do not have money or how to get to the fulfilling life part, you help. But what is it that you know that they are not successful in these areas? Is it that they are not doing something correct for themselves? It cannot be just about a few things like pen or a thing that is very seriously taken. I understand that spirit behind it, but in the sense that why is it that they are not succeeding when they are experts at what they are doing? What is it that they are doing wrong or not doing part? Yes, you will be able to tell them, but what is it that they are doing wrong? It's, as they say, prevention is better than cure.
So, first, I want to say there are very real things out there that keep us stuck, right? There's systemic oppression, there is racism, there is classism, there are plenty of things working against us. Sexism, ageism, a lot of things can keep us in a place where we don't want to be that are outside of our control. So, I want to put that out there to say that that is a very real thing that people deal with. But the best way that you can combat that is you have to find role models who show you that you can achieve more. Because the problem is that when you are born into a situation like poverty, or maybe it's that you can't seem to break above a certain level of income, and you had like working class parents when you were growing up, a lot of these things impact our minds and what we believe is possible for us. And so it becomes really difficult for us to break out of these situations that we are in, that we've been born into, or that we've fallen into after years and years and years of failure and like being told we're not enough. None of that, there's nothing wrong with that. That's out of your control. But what's in your control is finding people who show you that what you want is possible. And that is going to be a mix of people, because if you look at a celebrity whom you really admire and you just like love them so much, and maybe they're like a celebrity business owner, and you're like, that's what I want. I want to be that person. I'd love to have that. Well, that person is so far removed from where you are that it doesn't feel believable to your brain or your subconscious. So, what you need to find is someone who's a few steps ahead. So, let's say you're like working three jobs and you don't know how to make ends meet. You're living paycheck to paycheck, and you feel like you don't know what else you can do. So you need to find someone who came from a similar circumstance, someone who went from working three jobs to working two jobs or to working one job, and how they made that leap. And you may not find someone who fits the bill completely, but if you can find a bunch of different people who can inspire you in different ways, and that can be maybe somebody has a similar background to you, maybe they look like you, maybe they have your same name, maybe it's a friend of a friend, maybe it's an old neighbor, an old coworker, things like that. But if you can't find any of that, it's okay to look into the media. So your subconscious, your brain, like our brains haven't evolved in 200,000 years. So our brains cannot tell the difference between TV and books from real life. Our subconscious treats them the same way. So even if you know nobody else personally who can show you that what you want is possible, what you can do is watch TV shows that show you that you can make that change. So it's crazy, but like plenty of Bollywood movies show rags to riches stories, right? So
Right.
if you can find a TV show or movies that fit the bill of what you're trying to do, and think of it, there's so many movies, right? There's like, the poor girl marries rich, or she becomes a business owner, or he gets rich with an idea. There's so many movies and TV shows like that. And so, even if you know nobody else, you want to find media that speaks to the goal that you want for yourself. And I don't care how outlandish that goal sounds. I don't care if your friends think you're nuts. It doesn't matter, because you need to just soak up as much inspiration as you can. And that includes listening to podcasts like this, because you don't need to dump all your friends if they don't believe in you, because family loves you, but they love you from a place of wanting you to be stable and safe. And they can't think beyond their own circumstances. So it's not that you need to dump all of those people. It's that you need to really fill your ears, fill your eyes, fill your brain with as many other sources of inspiration that show you that you can do it too.
Right, right, Jesse. I want to understand from your life. How was your life before the success you achieved? Was it because you moved on to, Gainesville, that place? Is it because of the name, or is it because the nickname that, Forbes gave you? Because before that, I'm sure, I don't know whether how you considered yourself, whether successful or not successful. You had a good education, a proud getter, if I understand. So
Yes.
how was that life? I'm sure you must have had a lot of Gatorade with lot of energy and all. So, you know, just joking. So in that sense, that how was the life before that? And what is it that was it very successful, or is it that only when a few things happened that everything happened? How did you turn around your life, or was it very successful from the very beginning?
So I would say, first of all, coming from a place of privilege, although I'm Hispanic, I, enjoy all the privileges of a white woman. I understand that. And so, I already have that working for me. I can't lie about that. And I was lucky in the sense that, my parents were the, combination of scholarship and my parents helping and me working was it put me through college. But I was a lawyer before I started my business. And
Okay.
when I was working as an attorney, as a lawyer in Washington, D.C., like I was successful. I worked for Bloomberg Law, reporting on criminal justice issues. I went to work for a very well-known nonprofit after that. And that's where I got into this place where I had reached success. I had reached the level of success that, a lot of people are aiming for, especially when they're in law school or early on in their career. And it's what I had been envisioning for myself. And the big difference is that once I achieved it, I realized, wait a second, I'm not happy. I thought I would be happy. I thought when I had the salary and I lived in the city and I had the guy, like I thought that would make me happy. And I wasn't. And that's where I had to start looking and seeing, well, what's missing? What's wrong? And it started with the pens, right? It started with small things like that. I started really looking at my own limiting beliefs and why I thought I had to do this safe, stable career. Why hadn't I explored anything else? Because I had this secret dream to be some kind of life coach, a best-selling author, a speaker. And I didn't know how to do that as a lawyer because my heart wasn't in that. So the first thing I did was I took on a couple of pro bono clients just to see if I liked it, because I'm a big fan of like, try it on before you change your whole life to go in a new direction. Try it on, make sure you like it. So I took on a couple pro bono clients and I taught them, a bunch of different things, but one of them was a job hunter. So I was helping her find her first job out of college, and doing this for free just lit me up like nothing else had. And I just enjoyed it so much. And I enjoyed writing things for social media and I enjoyed making content. And so I realized, okay, I'm piecing together what I think it is. And I think it's this combination of coaching, consulting, writing, speaking. So then what happened is I wound up getting fired from my job. because I was bad at it. Like I knew I was bad at it. It wasn't a good job for me. It wasn't a good fit. And when that happened, it was a week after I hired a business coach. I'd spent more money on myself than I ever had. I charged $6,000 to a credit card. And when I got fired, I was like, oh no, I just spent all this money and now I have no job to pay this back. And instead of panicking and finding something else, I made the controversial decision, according to my fiance, to stick it out and like try to make my business successful. And it took a while, it took a little bit, especially like the first 8 to 9 months. I was teaching people job hunting, like how to network your way to a job. And then the pandemic hit and everything shut down. And I knew nobody was going to be hiring employees during an international pandemic. But I actually saw it as an opportunity. I said, well, I just spent the past 8 to 9 months figuring out how to start a profitable online business. So now I'm going to teach all of these people who now don't have jobs how to start profitable online businesses. And so I pivoted and I started doing that. And I really started to see success. And then along the way, I had manifested somebody who was starting her own public relations firm, and she said, "I'd love to use you as a guinea pig just to see if I can do it." Right? The advice I give everyone: try it for free first. Make sure you like it before you go fully into it. So she tried it. She took me on as a pro bono client, and I wound up in Forbes. Forbes ended up picking up a story about me. They nicknamed me the Millennial Money Witch. And from there, I just kind of brought into my business. Eventually brought back the job hunt coaching because people started hiring again. And I just kept showing up on social media. When I realized it was time for me to start speaking, the first thing that happened was, I just started sharing my opinions on TikTok. And one of the opinions I'd had was in response to somebody talking about what perks do millennials want in the workforce? How can we keep them in our companies instead of them job hopping? So I had a whole long response to it, and I explained my position, and it ended up going viral. As of today, I think it's got like over 3 million views. So that really catapulted me into the spotlight. I got picked up by BuzzFeed, Yahoo, a few different news outlets covering that perspective and that story. And from there, I was discovered by an editor for a publisher. And that's how I wound up getting my book deal for The Witch's Way to Wealth. And that's like how I arrived there. So it was a big roller coaster. It wasn't easy in the beginning. I didn't just start making money and take off like a lot of coaches say they do. They don't, but that didn't happen for me. There were a lot of like high months. There were a lot of low, scary months. But the thing was is that I kept with it. And I do recognize I am privileged in the sense that I had a supportive partner who was there to like help me. He had some kind of income to help me out with things. And yeah, I stuck it out because it would have been really easy to give up at any one of those low points. But I had this vision and I was really committed to it. And I learned to believe in it more and more as I collected all of these role models showing me that it was possible. And then like all of those experiences with money and work and business, that's what I ended up writing about. That became the book. The book is all about that. It's all about like what to do when you're in those low places. And yes, it has things like magic spells and crystals and herbs and things like that, like all that kind of fun stuff. But it's also got advice on budgeting, on networking your way to a job, on starting and scaling a business. It's got money mindset stuff because it's all of it's connected. So that's why I realized I had to live through it, was because it directly led to this. I couldn't have written a book like that if I hadn't lived through the experience.
Absolutely. So if I understand, earlier you had money, you had a good job, you had everything, but the fulfillment part was not there.
Right.
And so with whatever happened, it brought you closer. And you started getting that feeling, through those pro bono clients that you started with. And that actually started the chain reaction.
Yes. Yeah. Because that was how I realized, oh my God, I love this. And so it was just following that passion and that love toward it. And, like I'd had plenty of months where I made nothing, and and those months were really scary. I had rent checks bounce. Like that was embarrassing. And I still had to keep with it. I just kept going. And eventually, like when I added in public speaking, that was scary too. It was like starting a new business. Even though, I had an established business, I had to dedicate a lot of time to getting that going. And so I'd achieved some success, and then I felt like I was starting all over again. I was back to that point where, oh my God, I don't have money. This is getting a little scary. But the thing is that I just kept going because like I realized that once I pivoted to go after my dreams, like there was no alternative. There was no settling after that. And I remember one time I had mentioned like maybe I had said offhandedly, like half joking, like maybe I just need to like go get a job. And my fiance was like, "You have put me through so much stress over the past few years." He was like, "You're not giving up now." He was like, "We didn't go through that for nothing." And so that's part of it, is that you have to be willing to stick with it, willing to accept help as well. Like, don't be proud, ask people for help, hire help if you can. And like as soon as you can, right? The first thing I did was hire a business coach. After a while, once I got to a point where I felt like, oh, I'm pretty well versed, I have a lot of like understanding of how my business works, I hired an assistant because then I could teach my assistant how my business works. And like, I couldn't do, and I've had times where I've had to, let go of my assistant at the time or say I can't do it right now and go back to it being just me. But that's part of the journey. That's part of the journey. And you have to be willing to stick with it no matter what, because it's that grit that you have, that's what's going to get you to the place where you want to be. You have to have a delusional level of belief in your goal and your dream, and you don't get there by yourself, because I was not always there. I didn't always think that way. Like my first limiting belief that I really uncovered through like journaling and meditation is I realized that I had this belief that dreams were for other people, not for me. And that's why I was so pushy with my siblings and my friends for them to go after what they wanted, because on some level I felt like I couldn't do that for myself. And then I like to say that the best thing I ever did was stop giving my siblings unsolicited advice and start charging strangers for it. That's what ended up working out best. But yeah, you have to border on delusional really to like get to your dreams, and that's okay. It's okay if people think you're a little nuts, because you have to be to like go after big dreams.
Right, right, Jesse. Do you believe in magic? Do you believe in the power of the universe to, to give you what you think? Do you believe in the power of your dreams? And why I ask this is, even if you believe, if you say yes to all those things, I'll wait for your answer on this. But even if you believe on this, how do you tell the clients, those people who come to you for advice, how, and they are from very smart background, they have and smart people, how do you tell them to calibrate that practicality part of it, as well as being delusional about your dreams? How those things come together? How do they achieve that success? Because success will take its own, effort from your side. You can't wake up and success will be at your feet.
Right. Well, I do believe in magic. Like I'm going to put it out there. I know that that sounds nuts, but I do believe in magic. However, a lot of people would be surprised at what I consider magic. So, I consider personal finance, that's magic. I feel like networking and following your intuition on talking to people, reaching out to certain places, I consider that magic. You know, having rituals or having a routine where maybe you have a morning routine that you like to follow, or staying grounded. Maybe it's like you religiously work out every day because that keeps you feeling like stable and safe. I think that's magic. So a lot of things I put in that category, even though they are practical actions we take, because nothing works unless you do. Magic doesn't work if you don't work. And that's how I really arrived at it, as I realized that in my own practice and my own study of magic. And then being a science nerd, somebody who loves reading about science and neuroscience, epigenetics, I like quantum physics. I'll read anything, okay? Because I find it fascinating, especially if I don't fully understand it. And what I started to realize is that a lot of the steps in magic and spells and things like that you could explain with science. So for example, like a lot of mindset work, like a lot of magic is starts with meditation and embodiment. So like getting to a place where you believe fully that what you want is possible. Because if you don't fully believe it, even like subconsciously, your spell's going to either fall flat or you're going to get a result that's not very good. So for example, my sister, this is years ago, she had hired a matchmaker and she was like, I want to do a spell. Can you give me a spell for my first date to be really good? And I was like, okay, gave her a spell to do. But I told her, I was like, if you're afraid, like if part of you is afraid that that first date is going to be a disaster, it's better to not do the spell. Like just go on it and like enjoy it and, be prepared for it. And she was like, no, I'm going to do the spell anyway. Well, it ended up being one of the worst dates she ever had, because and it was because she cast a spell and she got that result because she was afraid on some level. She wasn't fully behind it. And so I started seeing, wow, that speaks to mindset. It speaks to those subconscious beliefs and how our neural pathways work. So within the brain, our brain is connected by all these little like synapses, and our brain's job is it's going to travel the route of least resistance. So well traveled paths. So the way you've always thought, it's going to travel that way. And so beliefs that you have or fears that you've developed from childhood, from growing up, or from any traumatic experiences, your brain's going to keep using that circuit until you do a lot of work to change it. And so that can be by having new experiences. And it can also be by just continually engaging in meditation and journaling and revisiting those memories that left those imprints on you and imagine them going a different way. Like when meditate, like I told you, your brain doesn't know the difference between real life and media. It also doesn't know the difference between, for example, a dream and a memory, which is why we can have recurring nightmares that are terrifying to us and they feel just as scary as something happening in real life. They can. So that's how I started realizing that, mindset was a big part of magic, and, that's how it worked. And then what happened is that when you go ahead and take action, once you've aligned that, once you feel like embodied in it, that's when you start getting the result. And so that's how I zeroed in on 3 steps. I said, wow, these 3 steps of spell work are the same 3 steps that you need to achieve really any goal. And so I boiled it down to 1, align your intentions, 2, embody your intentions deeply, and 3, take inspired action daily. Because that's the combination you need to follow. That's what magic is, but that's also what goal setting is. That's exactly what you do. And so if you're at the very beginning, I mean, I talk about these 3 steps. That's what made up the context of the book. But the first thing you need to do is work on your mindset, because you need to fully believe it. You need to believe it not just consciously, but subconsciously. And so the only way to get down there is to revisit some of the more painful aspects of growing up and our past and come to terms with them and heal those. Therapy is a part of that, but so is just, journaling, so is meditation, things like that. And then when it comes to embodying those intentions, I say it's living as if. It's not faking it till you make it to get there. That's where you set up your environment in a way to support the new beliefs, because it's hard to go from like, oh, now I believe I can. I didn't believe I could, but now I can. It doesn't work that way. You have to set up your life in a way that it supports you thinking about that goal and having it. So I say, think about what your life looks like on the other side. Imagine it. Like, what would your life look like? And let's say for a lot of people, they'll say like, oh, I would have a cleaner. My house would be clean all the time because I would have a cleaner who comes by and I wouldn't be so caught up in all my mess, right? Well, what you can do now to make your life look like that is you can get creative. So I don't like to clean. Like I don't like to clean my floors, especially. It's like the worst thing. I hate vacuuming, mopping, sweeping. I hate it. So if I did, but I love to cook. So let's say I find a friend who loves to clean or doesn't mind cleaning, but she hates cooking. So I could trade with that person and say, you know what? If you pay me for your groceries, I'll make your dinners for the week. I'll do your meal prep for you. I'll like make it all on Sunday and then you take it home, but you come over and you clean up my house. If you trade like that, your brain is not saying, "Oh, I only have a cleaner because I'm trading." Your brain, your monkey brain is saying, "I have a cleaner. I have someone who comes and cleans my house." And so that's how you start to get your life now to look like it would on the other side. And so what your brain will do is it'll say, wait a second, I have a cleaner. I thought I was only going to have a cleaner once I achieved what it was I was going to get, which means I should have achieved it, but I haven't achieved it. And that's a discrepancy I don't like. So I need to connect the dots from where I am to where I am on the other side of that goal. And that's when your intuition will kick in and you'll start getting these ideas and this inspiration on how to close that gap. And that's how your brain works. That is literally a function of the hippocampus and the amygdala. Your brain will use thousands, millions of data points from your entire life to come up with ideas to recognize patterns. And even though you're not consciously thinking of a specific memory or specific experience, it's scanning everything and saying, okay, in the past, I had to do X to get to Y. So that means I need to do this here. And you won't recognize that process because it happens within seconds. It feels magical, but it's actually just brain science. And so that's how I've taught it, is that I had to learn the science because I had to explain it to other people. And I do explain the science. I have a whole chapter dedicated to science in this book, well-researched science, because for me, I can't just hear something and say, oh, yeah, okay, I'll follow that. I need something to have proof or backing or a peer reviewed article. Like, I need those things. I'm still like a former lawyer, former journalist. So, having that stuff and teaching it to people, even very skeptical people, then they start to say, oh, okay. So you're saying magic, but it's not what we think when we hear magic. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. Science is magic, magic is science.
Absolutely, absolutely, and especially about that friend that who can cook, who can clean, and you can cook for him or her. That's something reminds me of the old system of barter system. Where
Yeah.
there was no currency, and our minds used to work. That
Yes.
I've got something, I need to find someone in this difficult situation, someone who needs my product, and someone who has what I need. It was indeed a difficult thing, but they used to find a way.
Yes, I literally talk about that in my book where I say that like that's why money exists. Money isn't real. Like it's just paper, it's just metal, it's just but we all agree that it has value. And even now, even more so, it's just numbers on a screen. Right? Like we don't even touch money a lot of the time. So it only has value because all of us believe it has value. And it's just a standardized method of transaction because like you said, we used to barter. And the example I use in my book is I say like if I've got sheep and I like knit sweaters, like I make yarn and I knit sweaters for people, in the winter time I can probably get tons of eggs, maybe a few chickens. But in the summertime, when nobody needs sweaters, all of a sudden now I can't seem to get the same amount of goods that I had before. That's why money got introduced. Money is just a social construct that we've all agreed has value. It's not actually real. And if you can think about it in the sense of, okay, this is just paper, this is just metal. And then on top of that, thinking of it as like, okay, not even just that, but it's just numbers on a screen, it's going over Wi-Fi, it's all around us. If you can think about it like that, now it starts to feel like money's everywhere. And if you could only like reach out and grab it, it could be yours, which may sound a little delusional, but sometimes we have to be delusional to get to those goals. And if that feels like a stretch, which I know it does for a lot of people, especially if you haven't come from having money or you've never really had much of it, thinking like, oh yeah, plenty of money for everybody. Like the great idea, Jesse. Like that sounds great. No, notice what is abundant. I say start out by just saying like, wow, look at all these bricks in this building. Wow, look at all these, look at all these leaves on this tree. I couldn't even count how many. And even unfortunate things or things that we don't like, you can play a game, like play the abundance game with it. For example, a few years ago, we had an infestation of fruit flies in our house coming out of the drains, like just everywhere. It was disgusting, and we didn't know, and we were trying, like we didn't know what was causing it. It was just like everywhere. And so I just started being like, wow, we are so abundant in fruit flies, like abundance in flies. And so it turned it from something that was like really irritating into something that was like a fun and funny abundance practice. So yeah, if money feels like too much of a stretch to be like, oh yeah, it's everywhere, it's all around me, you can go with the things that are. Sunshine is all around you, air is all around you. And like, let's say you go into a McDonald's, right? If you walk into a McDonald's, let's say it's a McDonald's in one of those buildings, right? In a city where there's like offices on top. You walk in there and you go to pay, and you just think like, yeah, I'm buying like a Happy Meal for $5 or something. I'm buying a cheap Happy Meal, but my money is going to this corporation, like through the airwaves. They're getting money. All the people working here, they're getting paid. All the people in the offices above me, they're working and they're making money for their companies. The company is paying them paychecks. So, like, maybe there are cars parked outside the street, and you're saying, okay, all of those people had to pay those parking meters, and they're paying car payments on those things. Or, you start to, if you think of it like that, you're like, wow, this money is like literally in the air, just around me all the time because it's over the Wi Fi. And so even if you just take a second to just appreciate when you go to pay for something in a space like that, and just like even just imagining like the entire chain of transaction, right? Because if I eat chicken, if I have chicken, like that chicken, it took a lot for that chicken to get to me. You had to have people raising that chicken. You had to be, vets caring for that chicken. That chicken had to go to a slaughterhouse. Those people had to work at it. Or let's say rice. That's everybody eats rice around the world. Think of the people who had to like painstakingly gather that rice. They had to, like, you have the farmers who grow it, then you have the people gathering it, then you have the people washing it, you have people processing it, then you have people bagging it. There's just so much that goes into a single bag of rice for you to then eat. And then it's like abundant when you have a nice big bag of rice, right? And so sitting there and just being even grateful for that, and just saying like, that's a practice in witchcraft too, is to thank your food and be like, thank you for sacrificing your life source to feed me. But then also thanking every person who is involved in that, in like getting that food to your plate, because it's so many people, dozens, hundreds of people have touched that for it to get to you. And so even if like abundance and seeing money everywhere feels too much of a stretch, you can go in with gratitude and just take a moment to think, oh wow, so much went into this rice, so much went into bringing this chicken to me, so much went into this. And just having that moment of gratitude for all the people involved just to like bring you your dinner or like whatever it is, that's also a great starting point, because it's feels a lot better than feeling stressed and anxious, right? Like that feels much better. Even if you don't have a lot, you can be grateful for what you do have.
Absolutely, Jesse. Well said. I like it. And in fact, but tell me one thing, as a lawyer, train brain into that. There the mindset is a bit different. That's where the way you have to function. How do you train the lawyer brain of yours or legal brain of yours to think about these aspects? There it is a bit more, in a secluded environment, much more confined. Here it's much more in an abundant atmosphere. Legal mind as well as journalist mind. Journalists also tend to get a bit of cynicism sets in your life, the way you see or report things. How do you then bring? Why I ask this is a lot of people have jobs or training in a way that does not allow them to think in an abundant way. How do you do it so that they can also learn from it?
I tell people because truth be told, I'm a Pisces. I've been very witchy and intuitive and
Same
artistic.
here.
Oh, you are? Oh wow, that's so funny. Yeah, so like I was always like I was the weird kid, the weird daughter, like the person who was interested in witchy things, spiritual things, religion. Like I was just always fascinated by like the mysteries of the universe and the beliefs of other people. That's a thing that Pisces is naturally drawn to, that and like creativity. So learning to be a journalist, learning to be a law, kind of like learning the law, kind of pushed my brain in a different way. And it forced me to become more analytical. So I think I come at it with a great perspective because I had this natural, intuitive, creative way of thinking. And then I brought in analysis, which is also a great strength. I have Gemini rising. So, of course, that was there. But it was, it kind of like, forced me into like tunnel vision, like how you have to analyze the law, analyze legal issues, or look at a story you're reporting on and seeing how do you explain this in the right way? What other sources do we need to like get the point across? So I think I'm in a good position to explain it to other people. And what I say now is you have to forget what you think you know, because once we've been in our careers or we've been working for a long time, and life, when we're young, we make all of these big plans. And then we quickly realize that those plans don't happen the way that we want them to or the way we think that they should. We know this. And so, what we naturally start to do as we get older is we shut down this part of our brain that allows us to dream. And so because we don't want to get attached to anything because we're like, well, it's probably not going to happen, so I shouldn't bother anyway. I don't even want to think about it. And so what I tell people is that like rather than like, leaning on what you know, which is like, the like so many people will say, I'm not a pessimist, I'm a realist, right? Like I'm a realist. And I'm not saying you have to give up your pessimism or your realistic outview on life, but I say just like forget what you think you know. Is it always true? Always true for everyone, everywhere, all of the time? Probably not. Very few things are, except like death and taxes, right? That's the saying. That's the only two guarantees in life. So if it's not true all of the time, can we then allow a little bit of magic into it, right? Can we just like make a little bit of room for us to be wrong in a way that's actually good for us? There's a saying in relationships, it's like I'd rather be in love than be right. And so I say the same thing when it comes to our careers and our money. Like, would you rather be a realist, or would you rather dream a little? Like, would you rather like try? Like, is it, and not everybody wants to. That's the thing, is that not everybody has big dreams. And when you have big dreams and you've grown up with like this big vision for yourself, you naturally assume everybody else is like that. You're like, this is how everybody is. You don't realize that you are actually the minority. Many people are very content with very, very simple lives. And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. It's nothing wrong with them, but there's also nothing wrong with you. You wouldn't want it if it weren't meant for you. For example, I do not want to be an astronaut. I have never wanted to be an astronaut. Thank God, because I am not very good at math. So it would have been really
Same
hard.
here.
Yeah, it
Same
would have
here.
been really hard for me to get there. Not impossible, but it would have been hard for me to do it. And so I don't want it because it's not meant for me. That's not something that's there for me. But writing a book, I've always wanted to do that. That's always been there. Being on stages, like I was a theater kid. I've always wanted to be in front of an audience. Like giving advice, nobody could shut me up. My entire life, I was always like, I was that weird child telling adults what to do. And they were like, what are you saying? And then I would be right. And they'd be like, okay, that's an old soul, as they like to say when you're a child who knows too much. So, yeah, I just like to say, like, forget what you think you know. Allow a little mystery. It's fun. Like, it makes life more enjoyable, more fun. So, why not?
Why not? Why not? Why not let magic happen? Why not universe? Let universe come into your
Why not?
life. There
Yeah.
is why not? There is much to learn from you, Jesse, and this is just one episode. For more people will have to, come to you and learn directly from you because there is so much to learn from you through your books. So, what is the best way for for people to connect with you and get all the wisdom that they can from you? And second thing I want to understand is why did you name your cat Mens Ria? It's a very you can say legal sort of a
It is,
name.
yes. I got her my first year of law school. Her name is mens rea, which means like a criminal state of mind. So it means a guilty mind in Latin. And all cats have guilty minds. So that's where that name came from. She answers to Rhea. That mens rea is her full name for the vet. But yeah, that's where that name came from. It was just, kind of a funny joke. And it's funny now to see people who get it, where they're like, oh, they're like, I had a I had a vet who was really into true crime. And so she was like, oh, is somebody a lawyer? Mens rea. And I was like, yep, former lawyer. So that's where that name came from. But yeah, for people to get in touch with me, the best way to do that is you can go to the website, thewitcheswaytowealth.com. And that's witches, no E in there. It's like a possessive, not a plural. So thewitcheswaytowealth.com. That'll take you directly to the page where you can like order my book or get in touch with me. So you can find me over there.
Wonderful. Wonderful. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Ajay.